Hey family, welcome back to Simply a Better You. I am beginning my day, lighting some candles, filling up my water bottle, and getting ready to start my day. It is a cool 66 degrees outside in northern Kentucky this morning, so I'm going to start this day off with a nice hot cup of maple chai tea from Farmhouse Teas. I've really enjoyed this tea. This is not an overpowering spicy chai tea. Not at all. It's very light. You have all the notes of that fall spice and mapleness in it, but it's not overpowering, and definitely something that if you are not a tea drinker, this may be a good introduction to a nice fall tea for you. Now, I do double up on my teaspoons. I probably put a tablespoon of loose leaf tea in my filter here, and I'm going to allow this to steep for 7 minutes. I do like a stronger cup of tea, and even then this tea is nowhere near what I would consider bold or overpowering at all. But while this is prepping and it is going to sit and steep, I am kind of into my morning quiet time. So Joe has already left for work and the kids are still sleeping. I still have another hour and a half before they get up. So I am going to go ahead and sit down and have my quiet time, my time to read. This is usually when I sit down and read my Bible. I'll listen to a few devotionals, or if I'm following a Bible reading plan, or following a devotional plan at the time, this is when I sit and do that. Right now we're reading through the book of Matthew, so I've been kind of doing an overview with myself and looking for some insight on that. And then I share it with the girls when we start school that day. So we are going to jump into some bread baking here. And I always start that early in the morning because bread has to have time to rise. So I like to go ahead and pull everything out. Get your recipe out, have everything laying in front of you. I'm going to link this recipe in the description box below. And as far as I've been told, this recipe is foolproof. This is the first time I will be making this. So I've tried many bread recipes and they just have not worked for us. So I am hoping that this is the best sandwich bread recipe that everybody says that it is. I'm going to go ahead and get my stand mixer ready to go and add the attachment. I'm going to pull out my yeast from the freezer, which is a great place to keep it so that it stays good. I'm going to pull out all my measuring cups and measuring spoons. This recipe calls for very warm water, so I'm going to go ahead and get that. I would suggest you use filtered water with any baking that you do. I don't particularly care for my tap water, so we put in a filtration system and I'm using filtered water. I'm going to pop it in the microwave and let it warm up. You do not want this to boil. You don't want to kill your yeast, so just very warm water. Like I mentioned, I am going to put the link to this recipe in the description box below. That way you have all the ingredients and the instruction from the person who actually created this. This recipe also calls for either 1/4 cup of sugar or honey. I like to use honey with my bread recipes. I like the flavor of it and prefer it. I've also had a lot of problems with using, white sugar or just sugar in general for my health. I'm using a avocado oil in this. It's a very neutral oil. It's not overpowering. It doesn't have a funny taste. Or maybe an extra virgin olive oil could be an option as well. So I have all of that in the bowl, and I'm going to kind of stir it up to just kind of incorporate it and mix it. And we're going to let this sit for 10 minutes. While that is sitting, I've gone ahead and scooped out my first 6.5 cups of flour. As you can see, it has poofed up here. And I'm going to begin to add the first 3.5 cups of flour to this. Now, like I said, I've already pre-measured 6.5 cups of loose flour, not packed, into this bowl, and I'm going to begin adding it to the mixing bowl. Of course, it helps if I plug it in. Okay, now I have sped up this part of the clip, so it really looks like this mixer is going fast. This is probably, I have this set between 2 and 3 on my mixer. You don't want a super slow speed and a super fast speed, so kind of pick something in the middle. But this is a very long clip, and I didn't want you to sit and have to watch, so that you could see the dough starting to come together. Now, obviously, this isn't going to happen in a minute, so it is going to be a process. You're going to be adding flour and adding more flour. I also want to mention that I did add the 6.5 cups of flour, and I needed to add a little bit more. So just try to do about 1/3 cup at a time, so that you don't over add flour. Okay, now you can see here where the dough has come together. It's come off the walls and the bottom of the bowl. Okay, go ahead and add just a little bit of oil to your bowl. This is so your dough doesn't stick. Add a little bit of oil to your hands. That way the dough doesn't stick. And you're going to coat the inside of this bowl. And this is where your dough is going to rest and proof for the first time. And just do a little bit at a time. I've definitely over oiled a few bowls here and there. That first time you do it, you really don't know. But you only need a really light layer of oil. And choose a bowl that is big. You want to give it enough room to rise, and this dough is going to double, so pick a really large bowl if you have it. Okay, go ahead and scoop your dough out. Gonna kind of want to shape this into a ball. Kind of round it out, shape it into a ball. There's no need for you to put it on the counter or anything like that. Just shape it into a ball. Some people just dump it right into the other bowl. It's totally up to you. Some people leave it in the mixer bowl. You'll want to cover this with a light towel, or you can even use some plastic wrap. And while that is proofing for an hour, or until it doubles in size, I'm going to measure the floor for a rolling island. I need some extra counter space to bake, so I'm going to mark out on the floor some measurements for a possible small rolling island that I can use and then push out of the way when I need to. But I want to get an idea of just how much space this is going to take up, and see if I can actually work around this size cabinet. Now, usually while I'm waiting for my bread to proof, there's so much you can do. Go ahead and wash all the dishes you just dirtied up. And, you know, I'll run and go and get groceries, which I'm going to do here in a few minutes. And, you know, I may start on dinner, or I might start on some type of activity that I've been working on. I may run upstairs and edit a video. But once that hour has lapsed, or just about there, you'll want to check on your bread to see, has it doubled in size? And you can see here, this is nice, big, and poofy. It'll spring back when you touch it. Go ahead and prep your pans. I keep, when I'm baking and I have to use sticks of butter, I keep the wrappers so that I can use them to grease the inside of my pans. We'll just call that the frugal side of me. So I keep them in a little Ziploc bag in my fridge, and every time I need to grease a pan, a muffin tin or something, I pull out a butter wrapper. Okay, now this is the most satisfying part of bread baking. You get to punch your dough down. You're releasing all the air out of the dough, pushing it down. And then you can knead this in the bowl if you would like. You do not have to put it out on a counter. You don't have to flour a surface and make another mess. You can do it all here in the bowl. You do have to divide this into 2 loaves though, so it may be easier for you to put it out on a floured surface to actually cut it in half. You can pick this up with 2 hands and kind of tear it in half, but you may end up with some uneven loaves. Okay, you will want to kind of make this a ball. Get it into an even round ball so that you can chop this bad boy in half to give you 2 even loaves. You don't need one of these special dough scraper things. You can use a knife if you want. Flatten it out a little bit and roll it into the shape of a loaf. You're going to kind of roll it and tuck the sides under and form yourself a loaf. Seam side down in your pan. I try not to handle the dough too much because I've been known to over knead dough. Seam side down in the pan. There you go. We have our 2 loaves, relatively even. And we're going to go ahead and cover these and allow these to rise, which would be a second rise, for probably about a half hour, depending on how warm your house is. Now, these are a little bit more poofier than I would like, but I went to the grocery store and came back. A little bit more time lapsed than I would have wanted. So set your oven at 350. Make sure it is preheated before you put your bread in. I'm going with the middle rack. I have a gas stove. It is a convection oven stove. So depending on your stove will determine how long this bread is going to cook and if 350 is the right temperature for you. I cooked this for, the instructions said, about 30 to 32 minutes. I set my oven at 30 minutes and that was perfect. The bread had a nice crust on it. And we're going to go ahead and put some butter on the top of this. This will help soften the top of the loaf so it doesn't have that hard, crunchy crust on the outside. Because remember, this is sandwich bread. Now, you don't have to do this if you don't want to. but it does make it taste awfully good. And it looks beautiful. So these are a little bigger than I would have liked, but they're going to taste just as wonderful, whether it's big bread, small bread, medium-sized bread, you know, it's going to be pretty good. So don't cut your bread until it is completely cooled. You have to wait. You got to wait. Once it is completely cooled, you're going to love what you see. This bread is springy, it's soft, it has a great yeasty smell to it. It is perfect sandwich bread. I am absolutely thrilled. The color is wonderful. The crumb is wonderful. I mean, it has so much spring to it. This is what I've been looking for in bread. Now the ultimate test. Will the kids approve?
I'm confused.
Okay. So I want to use this as sandwich bread. Come here. You can see your expressions. We're going for kid approved.
This tastes better than the store.
Is it good, Hannah?
Yeah.
Yeah. How many pieces have you had so far? 3.
I only have one
You only
piece.
had 1. Okay.
It's mommy approved.
So we have successfully made our very first successful loaf of sandwich bread. This is the one we are going to use from here on out. So I am going to share this recipe in the description below. I definitely suggest that if you are not a baker, if you haven't done the bread thing, if you're trying and failing, you haven't figured out the whole cups versus grams and the weights and stuff like that, this is foolproof. I mean, wow, I am so impressed with this recipe. So guys, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so glad that I got this on video, not only to show you that practice makes perfect, there's no reason to give up, and that if you want something that bad, just keep doing it. It's not about the perfect loaf. So many of my loaves I have ruined and turned them into wonderful, scrumptious croutons. Lots of croutons. Wow, we have eaten so many croutons, but I'm a crouton master now. All different seasonings and different oils and things. I mastered croutons because I was trying to master making sandwich bread. Now I can make just any loaf of bread, especially if a good crunchy, crumbly bread, but I wanted a soft sandwich bread. So guys, thank you so much for joining me on my journey today. And as always, I bless you on yours.